Caesars Palace has just reported a $55 million loss, its Las Vegas revenues down nearly 10%, and it's been dropped from the S&P 500. Behind those numbers, guests describe $57 nightly resort fees and automatic minibar charges that trigger even when nothing's used. Once considered the standard of luxury on the Strip, Caesars is now a case study in corporate overreach and customer fatigue. How did one of Vegas's strongest brands lose the trust of its own visitors? To understand what's happening to Caesars, we have to look at more than just one bad quarter. The company's third-quarter loss of $55 million wasn't a random dip. It reflects deeper cracks in how Vegas operates today. Occupancy fell by 90,000 room nights, average daily rates dropped 6%, and gaming revenue declined sharply as high-end players disappeared. But the real problem goes beyond numbers. Guests now face $57 resort fees, $75 minibar restocking charges, and service complaints flooding review sites. On Reddit and TripAdvisor, visitors call Caesars a trap disguised as luxury and post bills showing charges for simply touching minibar items. Trustpilot reviews echo the same anger, that the brand feels greedy and detached. Meanwhile, CEO Tom Reeg insists there's nothing structurally wrong with Las Vegas, calling the downturn temporary. The contrast between leadership optimism and guest frustration tells a deeper story. In this report, we'll examine how Caesars' strategy, from pricing to experience, turned its palace into a warning for the entire Strip. The first warning sign for Caesars came from the guests themselves. In hundreds of online reviews, visitors described the same pattern: being charged for things they never used. A $50 nightly resort fee now applies to nearly every booking, even if travelers never touch the gym or Wi-Fi it supposedly covers. One guest on Reddit posted a receipt showing a $50 charge for simply opening the minibar door. Others reported restocking fees of $75 just for moving items inside. These aren't isolated cases. The Better Business Bureau lists dozens of similar complaints, and travel forums call Caesars a masterclass in hidden charges. For many travelers, the frustration isn't just about money, but trust. What once felt like a luxury experience now feels like a rigged transaction. Analysts say the price creep began years ago, but reached a breaking point in 2025 as occupancy fell and management turned to fees to offset losses. It's a short-term fix with long-term consequences, because once a customer feels tricked, they rarely return. Across social media, hashtags like Checo Vegas fees and Never Again trend, under posts showing itemized bills. The anger is visible, and it's reshaping how people talk about value in Las Vegas. And if the bill leaves you upset, the service that follows might do even more damage. If the price didn't push guests away, the service often did. Reviews on TripAdvisor and Reddit describe front desk staff who look like they don't want to be there, managers who argue with guests instead of helping them, and calls to customer service that go unanswered. One traveler wrote that when a ceiling leak ruined his laptop, the hotel's only advice was, "Let it dry." Another said a manager promised a room credit, but later denied the conversation ever happened. On Trustpilot, visitors share the same sentiment, that Caesars no longer treats guests like people, but as transactions. Behind the polished image, service quality has quietly collapsed. Employees report low morale after rounds of cost-cutting, and long check-in lines stretch through the lobby as staffing levels drop. For visitors who remember the old Caesars, where every detail felt deliberate, the change is jarring. The problem isn't just poor service. It's a loss of respect. Once a single bad review might have gone unnoticed, but in 2025, each viral complaint spreads instantly. A TikTok showing a $75 minibar fee or a staff argument at check-in can reach millions in hours. The damage compounds. And while frustrated guests speak out online, high-end gamblers are expressing their dissatisfaction in a quieter but far more costly way: by disappearing. While everyday visitors were venting online, Caesars faced a quieter crisis at the top. Its high-end gamblers, the whales who once filled penthouse suites and baccarat tables, started walking away. In the third quarter of 2025, CEO Tom Reeg admitted the shortfall in gaming revenue came entirely from the high-end segment at Caesars Palace. Estimates suggest table game losses alone reached $30 million. For a property that built its reputation on prestige, losing its elite players is more than a financial hit. It's an identity crisis. Caesars' decision to pivot toward mid-tier customers through expanded rewards programs may have filled rooms, but it diluted the brand. High-value guests complained that the resort now felt overcrowded and underserviced, while casual players noticed fewer perks and tighter comps. The shift was supposed to stabilize revenue, yet it exposed a bigger problem. You can't replace loyalty with volume. Once the casino of choice for celebrities and executives, Caesars Palace is now competing for the same mid-range crowd as Flamingo or Harrah's, both properties under its own umbrella. Industry analysts describe it as cannibalizing its luxury tier. The result is a house divided, rooms discounted, VIP tables empty, and marketing teams scrambling to patch loyalty gaps. And just as the casino floors thinned out, the losses became visible not just in the numbers, but in the silence of the gaming halls. That's where the next stage of the decline begins. On the casino floor, the decline is no longer abstract. It's visible. Dealers stand idle beside empty baccarat tables. Cocktail servers wait for players who never arrive, and the once constant hum of machines now breaks into silence. Caesars' third-quarter data confirms what guests already feel. Table game revenue dropped sharply, and occupancy fell to 92%, down 5 points from the year before, a loss of nearly 90,000 room nights. Average daily rates slid 6% as management slashed prices to fill space. Even with the discounts, total Las Vegas revenue fell between 7 and 10%. In the earnings call, CEO Tom Reeg tried to sound optimistic, pointing to a strong group calendar ahead with events like Formula One and BravoCon. But investors and employees alike noticed a shift in tone, from confidence to defense. Caesars has been selling off assets, including its stake in the World Series of Poker and parts of the Link Promenade, to cover its $12 billion debt. Inside the resort, cost-cutting has changed the rhythm of daily life. Fewer staff, fewer amenities, and fewer guests create a feedback loop that's hard to escape. The gaming halls that once symbolized Vegas's energy now reflect its fatigue. Locals describe it as quiet, in a way that doesn't feel luxurious, just empty. And as the silence deepens, the brand's reputation suffers louder than any slot machine ever could. What happens when the show city loses its show? By the end of 2025, Caesars' biggest problem was no longer its debt or declining revenue, but its credibility. While customers vented online about hidden fees and poor service, executives framed the slump as a short-term correction. There's nothing structurally wrong with Las Vegas, CEO Tom Reeg told investors, insisting the city's fundamentals were strong. But inside the industry, that optimism sounded detached. Analysts pointed out that competitors like Wynn and MGM retained their premium guests, while Caesars' reputation eroded among both tourists and locals. Media outlets began referring to it as a cautionary tale of overpricing and under-delivering. The phrase stuck. Search trends show queries like, "Is Caesars worth it?" surging by double digits. Even loyal Caesars Rewards members say they no longer recognize the brand. The marble halls look the same, but the promise behind them feels broken. Employees describe mixed signals from management, public optimism, private cutbacks, leaving staff uncertain about the future. Investors have grown wary too. The company's stock has fallen more than 50% in 2 years. The story of Caesars now reads less like a financial setback and more like a trust crisis, one that can't be repaired with promotions or press releases. Because once Las Vegas's most recognizable palace loses the faith of its audience, rebuilding that magic becomes harder than winning any game on the casino floor. And if leadership still believes this is temporary, they may be gambling with something even riskier than money: their legacy. What's happening at Caesars isn't an isolated collapse. It's a mirror reflecting how Las Vegas itself has changed. The city once built its empire on accessibility, cheap rooms, generous buffets, and the idea that anyone could feel like royalty for a weekend. But over the past decade, that promise has been replaced by a model driven by data, fees, and dynamic pricing. Algorithms now decide what a room costs, how much a drink should be, and even when your loyalty points lose value. It's efficient, but it's also cold. When every interaction becomes a transaction, the emotion that made Vegas magnetic begins to fade. Caesars simply pushed that model to its limit, monetizing every inch of the experience until customers felt more studied than served. The irony is that these tactics work on paper. Revenue per guest rises briefly, yet they erode the very psychology that sustains the city, the illusion of value. Las Vegas doesn't sell gambling or luxury. It sells escape. And when escape starts to feel like exploitation, the brand of the entire strip suffers. If there's a lesson in Caesar's downfall, it's that even the brightest neon can't hide the cost of losing trust. Whether the city learns from Caesars or repeats its mistakes will shape the next decade of its story. What do you think? Can Las Vegas rebuild trust, or has it already crossed the line? If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe for more deep reports on the real Vegas, the one beyond the lights.